So, welcome back to RBB. We are here at Southwest Washington's premier shooting range and retail area and training facility, Safe Fire. With me again is Ben Edmond from Fundamental Shooting. Now, one of the things, if we could switch gears a little bit, one of the things that I wanted to hit, because it seems to be a little bit timely right now, and I want to get your thoughts on it, was there have been videos for quite a while about ever since the George Floyd riots, where impromptu protests have taken place. The law enforcement haven't always been able to control the flow of where those protests occur, and they tend to kind of overflow into areas that people are coming and going in their cars. And most recently, there was a video of a man who found himself at the front of a protest, and limited video. The context that you see on the video is that his car is swarmed. He panics, and he first gets out of the car, gets beat up, gets back in the car, and then still panicked, decides to drive while the crowd is very much surrounding his car. And the concern that I have is that a lot of people, we think that'll never happen to us, and we think that only happens in big cities. And what I would want to kind of throw out there is, first, one of the things that we had just talked about was that you need to know what, if you find yourself in what you think is that situation, you need to orient yourself properly to it. Because, and let me give you an example, because not all unforeseen traffic problems are dangerous protests, right? There was also a video that happened over in Portland, Oregon recently, where a guy drove through a bunch of barricades and found himself on the path of the Rose Parade, which is a huge parade in the city, and he was driving his vehicle right through it. Those barricades are there to keep people from getting hurt. It's not the same thing. So being able to orient yourself as you're driving home, or you're on one of your routine paths, is crucial to knowing what it is you're seeing. So if you see barricades, generally somebody in government took the time to warn people and have taken the time to put those signs up, and that is probably a valid detour. Second consideration, if it's an impromptu thing that there was no warning, say you know that it's November and the Rose Parade in your city, whatever your event is, doesn't happen in November, but you happen to see a lot of emergency vehicles blocking the roadway, lights and sirens, uniformed people, maybe there's some sort of a traffic collision, fatal possibly, maybe there is some sort of a dangerous criminal who they've contained in an area, and they're trying to keep people safe by not letting them go through. Again, probably a valid situation. And so my recommendation to people would be, follow the rules, follow the law. You're going to have to find another way home. Unfortunately, that's how things happen sometimes. Any thoughts on that, or anything to add to that so far?
So those are really tough situations. I mean, you come around the corner and all of a sudden there's a mass of people, and it makes it really hard. If you've got a car behind you, you can't back up. We were not expecting that in any way. I'm expecting to come around the corner and I'm expecting to drive through an intersection. I am not expecting to see 1,500 people screaming and shouting and throwing stuff.
Right.
And so how do we react and respond to that? Lock your doors, roll your windows up, for one.
Right.
I mean, that's just you should absolutely be prepared and look for your immediate opportunity. And it might be to pull over to the side of the road and park and just duck. If they're not looking for you, if you're not drawing attention to yourself, they might just go right on past you.
Right.
At the same time, it might call for staying vigilant, driving slowly. That's where, because our vehicle is use of force, and it is considered lethal use of force if you use your vehicle correctly or incorrectly, depending on your perspective. So is it are you in a use of force appropriate? Is it appropriate to use lethal force in that environment?
Right.
That very much depends on what exactly is happening.
Right.
How do you prepare for that?
Think about it first. Pre-planning, consider, and that's all I'm doing, and I think that's all we're doing here, is to give people options on things to think about, things to consider. Do the research. I don't have answers. I do have, some considerations. One of those, like what you said, is you may be stuck for all intents and purposes in a group, and maybe the crowd is passing by you. Maybe they bang on your car. That's property damage. If they're kicking the doors, maybe consider pulling your phone out, taking video, so that you can show the insurance company later on that you didn't do the damage. You were stuck in something that was not necessarily an act of God, but it certainly was outside your control. And hopefully the insurance will pay for it. Getting out of your car, I think, is a very bad idea. And I can tell you that in the law enforcement realm, I've worked a number of different riots, protests, and been involved in some riots, including the Rodney King riot. And when you are in a protest line, from the officer's standpoint, there's a standing rule that you don't go out into the crowd alone, because if you do, you're going to get swallowed up, and then they're going to have to do what's called an officer rescue. They're going to have to send in a bunch of officers to come and drag you back, because you're going to get your butt kicked. So having that, what they would call the skirmish line integrity, was huge. And so transferring that over to the concept of remaining in your car, even if it's just one person kicking the outside of your door, getting out, no matter how big and tough you think you are, getting out and confronting that person, I can guarantee you you're going to be fighting more than that one person. A crowd is going to form, a tribe is going to form against you. So staying in your car and just putting up with it while they're just kicking the doors is one thing. Starting to smash windows. Now, I have heard, and I am certainly no lawyer, but that becomes even more intrusive, and that can become dangerous. There's a lot of considerations. Do you have your kids in the car? Do you have your significant other in the car? Do you have other people in the car that are underage that you may be responsible for? That may be a game changer of what your responses are, but there is no hard and fast rule when it comes to those considerations. And just, again, something to think about, do some research on, and hope and pray it never happens.
It's hard to even imagine, and yet there's video that shows that it does actually happen. And
Right.
So as good people that are trying to be prepared, we have to at least consider it. We have to think about, what are we going to do, and maybe taking a defensive driving course is
Sure.
worthwhile. And I mean, even that's from even if you're not worried about riots, have you seen the way that people drive?
Exactly.
So it's not a bad thing to take a defensive driving course and know how to drive at high speed in reverse.
Thanks, folks. We'll catch you back here next time on Ranges, Backstops, and Berms.
Train hard, train fast.